I mean, we're back. We're back. Look at, I got my buddy back. Say hey, Groot. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Filmstruck Film Club. We did it. We made it. We were gone for a little bit, but we're here. And I hope that you got to watch this week's film because it was incredible. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then welcome to the Filmstruck Film Club. We watch a movie a week. You know, usually something from the Criterion Channel or something that's like maybe classic, important piece of cinema. You watch it at your leisure, and we do one of these at the end of the week, and we watch another film. It's a really easy and fun way to kind of just digest as much cinema as possible. And we watched something killer this week, something super awesome. Did you watch it? We watched Paul Schrader's Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. Now, look at that. Look at this. By the way, thank you, JT, for lending me the Criterion edition, because damn, sure is sexy. A killer 4K, beautiful picture and sound experience that I got to have watching this movie. A little backstory. So I like finding movies that are supposed to be really good. I love it when someone's like, that's the best movie ever, and I'm like, I've never even heard of it. And this is one of those movies that I would be watching, like one of those, when like filmmakers go into the Criterion closet and they pick their favorite picks. I've always wanted to do that. Someday we'll do that. Right, Groot? We're going to do that someday. But I just keep seeing people that seemingly have like good taste when it comes to film. They'll be talking on and on and on about all these titles, and then they'll say something like, oh, and Schrader's Mishima, and then they'll move on. And it's always kind of like that, where it's always like, Mishima. Anyway, and it's like as if I'm supposed to know why it's so great. And so it had just kind of become this elusive title for me. Mind you, it was on Criterion Channel all along. I could watch it whenever I want. But it took until, for whatever reason, for this moment, for it to fall in front of my eyeballs, and I watched it, and it blew my mind. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Mishima is about a real-life human being named Yukio Mishima, who on November 25th, 1970, committed public suicide. Now, I can see why a piece of information like that is maybe like, why would I want to watch that movie? Well, because Mishima is not just a famous person because he killed himself in front of people. This guy is one of Japan's greatest novelists, playwrights, poets of the 20th century. And he just so happened to have this very public suicide, where he committed seppuku, which is like a traditional samurai ritual suicide. Anyway, I can see how that's like a very dark subject matter. However, all I had heard about this movie was that it was beautiful. And I was in the mood for something beautiful this week. And also, I had been meaning to give Paul Schrader more of my time. He wrote Taxi Driver. He wrote Raging Bull. He wrote and directed American Gigolo. He recently wrote and directed First Reformed, starring Ethan Hawke. This guy has worked his entire life. And this movie, Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters, has been just kind of... He has said it's his best directed film. Roger Ebert has said that. All kinds of people say that. And so I just was very curious about this beautiful-looking movie. There's stills from it that are gorgeous. And so I just had to get to know this thing. And so I finally sat down and watched it. And I will say, I wish I did it backwards, because what I wound up doing is I did very little research, and then I watched the film, and then I watched a documentary about the real Yukio Mishima afterwards. I will say, go right ahead and do more research than I did if you don't know this man at all, like I didn't. It's worth it to kind of see him speak in his own words. You can kind of see him and how he holds himself and how he is, and listen to other people talking about him, so that by the time we arrive at Schrader's vision of this man's life, and it's a beautiful, as far as like biopic films go, this one's, it's the best. It reminded me similarly of Todd Haynes' I'm Still Here. Is that what it's called? Or I'm Not Here? The Bob Dylan movie with all the people playing Bob Dylan. Similarly, how that film kind of tries to deal with like this person as a sphere instead of like, and then these dots along the way happened until their number one record, right? We're not doing it that way with Mishima. Schrader had this really kind of interesting idea of using the last day of his life as kind of the focal point, and then we dip into his real life through like black and white flashbacks. And then we also kind of tell his story through his characters from his written works that are then presented kind of fantastically and theatrically in almost like it really feels like theater. It feels like a beautiful piece of theater is in the middle of this movie. And when you, like me, don't really know any of the stuff about Mishima, it can be a little hard to follow because I don't know the characters from his books because I don't even know the titles of his books. But Schrader does a great job. It is pretty clear. You know, the title and the year that it was published would be on the screen. And then because it is kind of fantastical and theatrical, it is separate. But the three pieces of work that he uses all kind of sort of help illuminate the pieces of Mishima that we're seeing from his real life. So the flashbacks are in this beautiful black and white. It looks like, you know, classic Japanese cinema. And then the day of his death feels very documentary style, handheld, color, just kind of real looking. And then the pieces of fiction are this like super heightened, colorful, beautiful things to look at. And they all are just kind of weaving in and out of each other because it was interesting. And so then, of course, it does culminate with this thing. I will say, spoiler alert, it's not like super violent. They deal with the seppuku very tastefully, in my opinion. I did watch it with my mom and my girlfriend, and they also felt that it wasn't too grotesque or too gory in any way. The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, Kyoko's house, and Runaway Horses. Those are the three Mishima books that are kind of displayed in these theatrical set pieces that are so stunningly beautiful. And shout out to, I have her name written down here, Eiko Ishioka. She was the production designer, costume designer of this film, and she had never done production design for film before. Fun fact, she had done the Japanese poster art for Apocalypse Now. And she had done such a good job with those that she got hired for this. It isn't that far off because I'm going to go on a little tangent here. American Zoetrope Pictures or Films or Studios, whatever the hell it's called, Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas's producing house. They produced this film. And they also produced Kagemusha or whatever Kagemusha? I haven't seen it, but it's a Kurosawa movie. These guys were in the 80s, they were doing a very good job of like trying to tap into Japanese cinema and bring it to the States because they loved it. And they thought, hell, if more people just could see it, maybe they'll love it too. And now we do live in a culture where, you know, anime is very popular, and I digress. Anyway, these 4 chapters that the film takes place in is almost like 4 little episodes. So the film is 2 hours, but it does kind of feel like, I don't know, it's just very well paced and very well put together. The 4 chapters are beauty, art, action, and then the last one, harmony of pen and sword. And there's just some really killer stuff going on in this movie. I mean, all of the cinematography is astounding. The score by Philip Glass is just a revelation. I mean, it like from the very first shot with the sunrise and that swelling of music and the title just kind of splashing onto the screen, it's so engaging and affecting, and I was just instantly just like eyes on the screen. The fact that they went to Japan, a handful of Americans, right, literally just a couple. Paul Schrader and his brother wrote the script. Paul Schrader's brother's wife is Japanese. She translated the script. They did have a Japanese producer. They did go shoot all of this film in Japan, either on location or at Toho Studios, which is like Kurosawa's studio. And so they like went and made a Japanese movie. I watched like a little. There's some really. I'm gonna show this again because it's such a cool box. But there's some killer documentaries on here, and one of which talks about how, like, you know, they would make sure that they ate all the same meals with the crew, and they took the subway to and from the studio. they didn't want to like impose their way too much. They were trying as hard as they could, even though everyone was very suspicious of them, because from what I found out, Mishima's a rather controversial figure in Japan, because he is kind of held in high regard for his writing, but he is kind of like kind of a national embarrassment in a way, I guess, for the way that his life ended. Not just that he committed seppuku, but you'll see in the film, and if you do watch the documentary that I was talking about, you'll see. There's just some controversy around this guy. But Ken Ogata plays Mishima in this film. He does a magnificent job. He's very engaging to watch. When I watched it, it was a Japanese voiceover narration by Ken Ogata, but turns out Roy Scheider from like Jaws and all that jazz and stuff, he did Mishima's narration in English for like I guess the American release of the film or something, and I did watch some of that, and it's so weird. I definitely recommend you watch it. Just watch the Japanese movie that is Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. Yeah, man, it's just so good. Like I'm glad that I finally got my chance to watch this movie, because it had been on the list for so long, and it's one that I can't wait to revisit. I was so nervous, I guess, to like, it seemed like maybe it was going to be violent or weird. I guess when I thought of Paul Schrader, I was like, oh, Taxi Driver is pretty gnarly, and then I was like, oh, it's about a guy who commits seppuku, like shit. But he really does find the nuances of like why this guy is so interesting, and what he was doing with his art, and whether you agree with him or not, he really like turned himself into this piece of art, and then Schrader turned his life into this really beautiful piece of art that is this film. So I was just totally knocked out watching this movie. What did you think? Have you watched it? Because if you have, you got to let me know what you thought of it. You got to hit me up at FilmClub, and you got to tell me what you thought of this movie, because Groot and I really, really liked it. We're going to have another pickup for us tomorrow. And in the meantime, watch Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters, and let me know what other Paul Schrader movies I need to go check out, because I got to go check out several. I haven't seen very many of them. Yeah, much love. So glad to be back in my place with my guy. And yeah, love you guys. See you soon. Bye.